Welcome back. In the previous lesson, we learned the basics of HTML. We created our first HTML document, understood its structure, and wrote our first HTML tags. But if you open that web page now, you'll notice something. It works, but it doesn't look very good. Everything uses the browser's default style. The text is black, the background is white, and there's no real design. That's where CSS comes in. CSS is what transforms a plain HTML page into a proper website. It lets you add colors, change fonts, control spacing, adjust layouts, and make your web page look exactly the way you want. So in this lesson, we'll learn how to add CSS to our HTML page and start styling our very first website. So technically, we can write CSS directly inside the head section of our HTML file. But as our project grows, that quickly makes the code cluttered and difficult to manage. Instead, the professional approach is to create a separate CSS file. This keeps our code clean and organized, makes it much easier to work with, and it's how CSS is written in real-world projects. Here's how to do it. First, go to VS Code again, create a new file, and save it as style.css. Style.css is the standard naming convention, but you can name it anything you like. Now, simply creating the file isn't enough. We also need to tell our HTML page to use it. To do that, go back to your HTML file and inside the head section, add a less than sign, link, space, rel, equals to, open quote, style sheet, close quote, space, href, equals to, open quote, style.css, close quote, and greater than sign. Once we've linked the file, anything we write inside style.css will automatically apply to our HTML. Before we start writing CSS, let's first understand the three main parts of a CSS rule: the selector, the property, and the value. The selector is the HTML element you want to style. It could be an h1, h2, p, div, span, or any other HTML element. The property is what you want to change. For example, you can change the color, font size, background, border, and many other properties. And finally, the value is what you assign to that property. For example, if the property is color, the value could be blue. If it's font size, the value could be 24px. Or if it's background, the value could be yellow. And when you put these three parts together, you get a CSS rule. Now I'll save the file and refresh the browser, and you can see that h1 on the page has turned blue. You can follow the same pattern for any HTML element, whether it's an h2, h3, p, div, span, or any other element. Just change the selector, choose the property you want to style, and give it a value. Since this is just an introduction to CSS, we've only used the color property. There are hundreds of CSS properties and thousands of possible values, but don't worry, you don't need to memorize them. As you build more web pages throughout this course, you'll naturally become familiar with them. So stay tuned for the next lesson where we'll continue learning more about HTML and CSS. See you in the next one.